Now there's like real hatred of the Jews. And now there's propping of Hitler as a good person. Yeah. So this is not Christian. There's nothing distinctively Christian about this, is what I'm saying. It's an anti-Christ movement that has come on us.
And if people hate you, that actually increases your audience.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, so...
The controversy, the more the fighting, more the algorithm goes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it sort of rewards a kind of, I think Carl Truman calls transgressive behavior. Mm-hmm. You just push the envelope more and more and more and more, and more people will watch.
I do have a homeland. I do have a country. And that one, it's a kingdom that cannot be shaken. America can be shaken and will be shaken. It's Babylon. That's the other thing you want to say to these people. America is a kingdom of Babylon. Well, Chad Vegas is here in Escondido from Bakersfield. My dear friend, and always glad to have you on the program. Great to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
It's good to be with another Valley guy.
It's a Valley guy. People don't understand that.
They don't understand the Central Valley of California.
No.
Most people, when they think of California, they think of this liberal.
Yeah.
They don't think of Texas right in the heart of the state, you know, which is what the Central Valley is sort of like. Oil, ag.
That's right.
Yeah.
They dropped Iowa right there. The breadbasket of the world.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I have fond memories of the Valley. I don't miss the Thule fog.
No, in fact, there was some this morning.
Was there?
It was really bad.
You drove over the Grapevine.
I drove over the Grapevine this morning, and so when I got to the Grapevine, the fog went away. But it was just, I was just completely blanketed in it until I got there. And then it was gone. I was like, oh, look, the sun. That's beautiful. Which, you know, the Valley is almost always sunshine.
Yeah.
But the Thule fog is one of those times when it's not.
Yeah. I think last time I had you on, we wrestled with the baptism thing. Is that right?
That may have been the last time. I mean, I think so. That's the last one I remember as us wrestling with that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that got some, it's funny what you think people want to listen to, and what's wrong with my mic here, what they, will find interesting. And we just thought we'd have this in-house discussion on baptism. But it's amazing how many people said, I listened to that.
Yeah.
And we kind of bantered back and forth and pushed each other a little bit.
Yeah, I got a lot of emails and ran into people who said, oh, I'm glad that you're pressing on that issue, and that was a good discussion. And I wondered how that would be taken by people. I thought maybe 3 people would listen to it. My elders maybe, as we've been thinking through how to handle all these things pastorally.
Yeah.
I didn't think that as many people would listen to it as did. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope it was helpful. So, today we thought we would do something less controversial. Does anyone believe that?
No. No, I don't believe it.
Where's Scott?
Yeah.
We'll be on with Scott tomorrow night. So
yeah, that's right.
He has his new venture with the Heidel video now. Did you see that?
He sent me the link to it, and I started to watch a little bit of it, but then I was busy, so I stopped. No offense to Scott, but yeah. Yeah.
We thought today we'd talk about one of the things that we're not eager to talk about, but we think something that we should talk about, just because it's so plagued, particularly the Reformed tradition, but is a obviously larger societal discussion and something that has a lot of history behind it. And so we want to kind of tackle what's happened with the Kinism movement, all the race, what they call realism stuff, anti-Semitism. We want to kind of tackle some of these challenging things, I think, for gospel ministry today, that people have really become, engulfed in these discussions online. It's really an online kind of movement, but as you know, these things affect us on the ground in the ministry.
Yeah, they do. Well, you see it because a lot of our folks are watching stuff on social media. They're watching podcasts, and the way these algorithms work, if you click on one thing, then it starts showing you more and more and more of that, and it's like rage baiting all day long. Right. And you see that start to take shape in the hearts of your folks in ways that are disconcerting. And it's a growing it's a growing discussion
Yeah.
that concerns me.
Yeah, and I think, I hear reports all the time of ministers dealing with this, and this stuff is dividing their churches, causing all kinds of wreaking havoc among the members. So it's something we have to take seriously. It's something we have to talk about because at the heart of it, as I said, this is something that takes a direct aim at the mission and mandate of the church. And so we're gonna wrestle through that a little bit.
And it's become popular, especially in the sort of podcast, videocast world among so-called reformed guys.
Right.
Guys who have stylized themselves as being reformed, coming really out of the Young Restless Reform movement, who are now suddenly some kind of public political theologians.
Yeah, online,
who are essentially arguing the reformed version of theology is to view the Jews this way and to view intermarriage, racial intermarriage this way and America this way. And it's been really fascinating, disconcerting, all of those things to watch.
Yeah.
It's easy to have a online platform.
Right.
And make something of yourself there. I don't mean easy in the sense that it doesn't take any talent, and I don't mean easy in the sense that you don't have to actually work at it.
Right.
I mean easy in the sense that you don't have to interact with your audience on a video cast every day.
Right.
You don't have to visit them in their homes. You don't have to be at their bedside in the hospital. You don't have to preach to them every week. You don't have to do any of that. You just go online and you have this online audience who doesn't actually know you, who doesn't see you over the period of decades and think to themselves, I have seen this brother at his top and I've seen him at the bottom. They don't know any of that. They just see you as an on-screen personality who's some kind of a talking head, who they're either attracted to your arguments and the way you come at things or they're not.
Right.
And if people hate you, that actually increases your audience.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, so
the controversy, the more the fighting, the more the algorithm goes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it sort of rewards a kind of, I think Carl Truman calls transgressive behavior. You just push the envelope more and more and more and more, and more people will watch.
And it's just not honest. I mean, we have consciences in this. And if you take Jesus's words, we're not about trying to make ourselves great. Then you have to really, the kind of self-denial in being a servant comes and should show here. This is why we want people to be discerning, that if you're simply rage baiting and you're building your platforms on these kind of controversies, it's not honest to Christian ministry. And if that's the platform from which you're building your popularity, it flies in the face of everything Jesus taught us about the humility of a servant.
Yeah. So Chris, doesn't this whole conversation though make you kind of into a little bit of a feminized sissy sort of? I mean, this is the problem, right? It's, we start having this conversation about having self-control, being gentle, being kind, and then it's like, well, you're feminine.
I've been called that. I've been called everything. Especially when I dug on, I got called everything under the book, and I realized this was anyone who disagreed with this kind of narrative. This was the de facto labels that they received.
Well, I know you. I've known you for some time. You're almost anything but feminine. Like, I don't know anybody who knows you. Be like, what a feminine guy. I don't know. I mean, you
it was the Valley Water.
You have to order special shirts to keep all your muscles in.
There you go.
And I have to leave my gun over on the other table so it's not on video. Like, we're just not in the feminine world, right? And like, but here we are. If you start saying things like be gentle, be kind, be patient, don't go out and just act as transgressively as you can. Be thoughtful about what you say.
Yeah, right.
Then you're feminine and you're weak and you don't really want to be a man. You don't really want to stand up. Yeah. And I hear these guys online. Like, I actually held political office.
Yeah.
So when I hear them talk about, oh, well, for you to come out and push against these things, you don't know, you're not a real man. I think to myself, what? Is it a real man just to be a talking head on video? Like,
well, do you have to be like, that's why what goes along with this is guys posting how much they deadlift, these guys, online. And I realized it's embarrassing to go online and post your powerlifting.
Well, I don't do any powerlifting. That's why I have a CCW. No powerlifting happening here. Not at all.
My point is like, the very characteristics Jesus taught us in the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes are the very things they're attacking.
Oh.
And, meekness, peacemaking, that's seen as weak, effeminate, whatever it might be. And, it's, again, you go back to what Jesus said. They're not really attacking you. They're attacking him because he taught us how to conduct ourselves in this age. And it has a lot to do with not exerting the kind of power and influence that the Pharisees did. By the way, by trying to take back the kingdom with power. That's what they expected Jesus to do. It must have been the same thing they said about him because he didn't flex with regard to Rome.
Yeah. No. Yeah. He like, well, you have this authority from my Father to crucify me.
Yeah.
If I wanted to fight you, I could.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I could call, he literally could call down a legion of angels and that'd be that. But that wasn't what he came to do.
Yeah. I mean, even in the garden, when he gives the words and they fly backward on their knees and bow the knee, we have an indication of what he could do.
Absolutely.
But they got up and arrested him and led him off to a cross because that was the mission. So, call that weak, call that what you will. That's fine. You know what? I hope all of the Lord's people will look more like Christ. So that's what we're after. Well, why do you think, if we're addressing this kinism thing, maybe sort of explain your thoughts on what it is. We'll come to anti-Semitism, racism, race realism, all this stuff. Why do you think, Chad, it is broken open like this at this particular moment? Now, that's kind of a large question, a broad question, and a complex question. But I do think there's certain things we can say about it to understand the trajectory of how we got here. That seemed to come out of nowhere. Well, not really, but that's what it felt like.
So I'm not a sociologist, but I guess I'm going to play one on your show.
Sure, go for it.
I've been around the block long enough now that I've seen movements come and go and things rise up, and you've watched the sort of swing of the pendulum. And I think what's happened is a number of things. I think, if you go back to the Reagan Revolution, and you think about what Ronald Reagan was saying, what makes an American? Do you remember that? That's actually key to some of the things that are being argued about now.
Yeah.
What makes an American? And Reagan said, you can be from Germany and you can come here and you can be an American. You can be Chinese and you can come here and you can be an American. You can be from Italy and you can come here and you can be American. You can't move to any of those countries and become Chinese or German or Italian, but you can come here and become an American.
See, that's a fundamental point.
That's a fundamental point about the nature of what it is to be an American.
It's not apples for apples when people say, listen, if I go to China, it's a different, our whole system was different.
So it's a set of ideals.
Right.
The problem is, I think, and that's being pressed against, is that with the rise of multiculturalism and the mass immigration of people from all over the world with no assimilation into those American ideals of what it means to be an American.
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, without any of that happening, you now have this idea that there is no such concept as an American. There's no American culture. There's nothing that really makes an American. What actually makes us American is the fact that we're all different ethnicities with different cultures and languages. And so there's kind of this balkanization.
Yes.
And what's happened is that we've detached our ideals as Americans. We've detached them from the culture and language in which they came about. Like sort of the foundation of, well, you have to have these Judeo-Christian beliefs for these ideals to be what really makes you American.
Which is a taboo statement now, by the way.
You can't. It's like I'm pushing a theocracy. Now, I'm not a theonomist. I'm not a general equity theonomist. I'm not any of those things. However, it is not theocracy to say that there was some kind of worldview
and shared interest,
shared set of beliefs for the foundation of our country that, let's just call it Judeo-Christian natural law kind of thinking,
right.
where they said, humans are this, God has created us. These are our inherited rights. These are the ways that we think about each other. If you get rid of that, which we're doing by bringing in all these peoples from all over the world and not assimilating them, then you don't have kind of a stable culture for this whole American experiment to happen in. And I think what's happening on the right is the left is just full-blown into multiculturalism. They want a different project altogether. But what's happening on the right, I think, is that they're all now glomming on to this sort of identity politics in a completely opposite side of the spectrum, where they want to say, well, because we've lost English as our national language in a real sense, and because we've lost Judeo-Christian morality as the basis of our society, what we need to do is just get rid of all the minorities.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, because none of this works for them. And I want to say, well, it doesn't if we don't assimilate them. That's true. So they're seeing a real problem.
And it is a real problem.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to be willing to say that. I was listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger the other day. He was on some program of a progressive. It was a liberal interviewing him. And maybe it was in front of Joyce Behar. I don't know. But anyways, he was saying, listen, when I came over here, I understood fundamentally that I had to come here and offer an advantage to American society and become an American. That's lost today. And he was criticizing the current, worldview of those who come. Yeah. And so it did show the distinction of those who at a certain point who immigrated to America understood that they were coming, he even said this, as a guest in another country. Well, and that was, so that's an important point to remember. And he goes through, listen, that is what's lost right now in our whole view of how, and even how we're going to function together as a people.
Well, it's lost. I mean, you could think of your own congregation, Chris.
Yeah.
You literally live in the kind of a Dutch enclave. Here's a people who immigrated here, who found a way to fight to keep their Dutch traditions and culture at home, but then wanted to assimilate into the larger American.
And love to be Americans.
Yeah, exactly. But they haven't given up Dutch traditions and Dutch cultures, and they haven't given all that up to be good Americans.
Right.
But the lie that's out there is you're either like born and raised here, and the longer your family's been here, the more American you really are. Or if you're a foreigner, you can't ever really be an American. So you cannot be, for example, a Jew who is committed to concerns for Israel, the nation where all these other Jews are, and be a good American. You can't be a Dutchman who's concerned about what's happening in the Netherlands and the history of that, and be a good American. Somehow we've lost the sense that you can do both of those things, or you can't.
Yeah, you can still celebrate your cultural heritage.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and be concerned for the people from your own family and tradition.
Yeah.
And yet be a good American. The problem is it's almost like we're swinging the pendulum back too far the other direction. It's like, we've talked about this before. The woke left is being responded to with sort of the woke right.
Okay, so this is what I think's happened on if you're getting to sociological study and how people work. What you've had is we were, especially white men, they were beat by this agenda as all racists for how many years now?
Oh.
How long has this gone on? And, the push on everything that's contrary to what people would see as, basic American value or even Christian value, right? Values. So this is so contrary. It's another religion being hoisted and dropped on us and forced on us for all these years. And what do you expect? You expect at some point, and that's why I always say when a lot of this, the pendulum swings come with whoever's in political office. So, bounces back and forth from a Biden to a Trump, from an Obama to a Trump, whoever it might be, all of a sudden you see the opposite extreme.
Absolutely.
Just break open.
Yep.
And that's what's happened is the woke left created by submitting and subduing people and forcing people and gagging people in college universities from speaking and experiencing white guilt, all this stuff, they have opened the door to this now. And the current administration, being Trump, being conservative, they feel gives them that kind of license to do this.
Oh, yeah. And I think the reason you see it on the Christian right, in part, is because somehow it was a lacking in Christian virtue to point out things that are obvious that we know, even from Scripture, we know from history and experience, that every culture struggles with sin in particular ways, and some cultures are more degraded in sin than others. And somehow we weren't allowed to say that anymore. You were a racist. If you're now, there were exceptions. If you wanted to say Nazi Germany was evil, you could say that.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to say, hey, this Aboriginal tribe over here, their culture is terribly degraded. Well, how do you say that? Well, they participate in cannibalism.
Right. Right.
They rape their women systematically.
Yeah.
I know of cultures like that. To say that culture is actually more degraded in sin than, let's say, the English culture. I'm not saying the English culture doesn't have sin.
Right.
But
Right.
it was like you were saying something racist, unvirtuous. You weren't allowed to say that kind of stuff. I think there's a reaction against that. The only thing you can say is any white person, or especially white male, or I don't even know what a white person actually is, but that's another conversation. Somebody whose pigmentation is lighter, I guess.
Isn't that an interesting talking point? Go on.
Anybody, any sort of genetically, European male, who thinks that Western culture actually brought good things to the table, that's a horrible human being.
Well, I got that back in the 90s in the university, in the secular university. I mean, it was so funny that at, Humboldt State University, circa 1996, 7, I'm in class. Now, I've been raised in a Reformed church. I'm in class, and she's attacking the Calvinistic work ethic of white European males as evil. And I'm sitting there like, I've never heard this. And this was in the university. And I remember a lady attacked Calvinism and, of course, got everything wrong about what Calvinism was. But this was so embedded in the university systems for so long in the teaching, it paved the way.
Well, it's in the evangelical missions world too. As a guy who's very involved in the missions world, which everybody generally knows that about me, all you have to do to color something bad is call it Western.
Yeah.
Western.
Right.
It's like therefore it's evil. I want to be like, friends, let's back up a minute and talk about all the good in the world that's come from the West.
That's right.
Has there been evil in the West? Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I'll speak out anytime about abortion.
Yeah.
What a wicked evil that's existed in America. Okay. Slavery, wicked. Did we end it? Yes. Praise the Lord. But did we participate in it wickedly? Yes, we did. So we can talk forced sterilization, Japanese internment camps. We can talk about a number of ways in which the West has participated and America has participated in sinful things. But that doesn't mean that we have to throw out all the good that's also happened.
Right.
Or have a conversation about, has it been net good or even better than other historical cultures or nations? Those are conversations you can have. But somehow, if you even try to have that conversation, it gets stamped down as imperialistic, colonizing, chauvinist, whatever it is.
Yeah, colonizing is exactly right.
Racist. And you just want to go, this is crazy. So I think what's happened is you have a lot of young men who've basically been told, shut up, be quiet, be a good little boy in school. You're the problem. Your family's the problem.
And forced us to be effeminate.
Yep, you're the problem. And they're like in their 20s going, I'm done with this.
I'm done with this.
Yeah, and they're ticked off.
Yeah, and they saw a political figure who could say the things against the system.
Yep.
And amazingly, it just rolled right off.
Yep. Like water off a duck's back.
Yeah. So they're like, wow, I can do this.
Yep.
I can be free from all this.
Yep.
And so it's like letting a man out of prison he just runs as far from it as he can.
Yep.
And so here we are. And now what we're hearing and what the sort of opposite extreme, and I have this great quote that I think is helpful. I wanted to read here because I think it captures it well. This was C.S. Lewis. The devil always sends heirs into the world in pairs of opposites. And he always encourages us to spend a lot of time thinking which is the worse. You see why, of course. He relies on your extra dislike of one error to draw you gradually into the opposite one. But do not let us be fooled. So that's exactly, I think, what we're dealing with in the church. I know the word balance is a word that's abused, but to find people who are well-reasoned and are able to see through these trappings. And so what we've had happen then is now, and it's interesting, on one side it was all, in the race discussion that happened 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, where everything was about racism and we were all racist, it all seemed to always come down to color of skin. And now on the opposite end, it all seems to come down to color of skin.
Yeah.
That's just where we are. So your color of skin, we're saying, what we're hearing is, listen, America's for white people. And so those who are not, I've even heard it from the Kinists, they need to go back. You can't marry anyone but your own kind. We have all this going on in the, socioeconomic sphere, all these things, political sphere, and it creates a huge dilemma for church ministry.
Let me ask that Kinist argument. What do they do with, for example, Boaz marrying Ruth?
Yeah, I think they would say there's exceptions to the norm.
So that...
Right?
Okay. So...
There's exceptions to the norm. However, that's the very line of Christ,
Yeah, I know. Christ is in that line. I mean, if you think about the Moabites, can you think of a nation, in one sense, more opposite Israel, like in the sense of their place in the history of Israel?
Yeah, they're cursed.
They exist as a result of Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughters.
Yeah.
They tempt Israel into all kinds of wickedness in numbers. They oppose them and try to send Balaam to curse Israel. Like they're and then here goes, Naomi goes down and her sons marry and Moabite women, and one of them being Ruth, and Ruth comes back and Boaz redeems her, and she's in the line of the Christ.
Yeah.
I wonder,
or even Tamar. She's a Canaanite.
Yeah, I know she is
the cursed Canaanite, the cursed Hamites, right?
But
that's like big discussion.
There's not very many women in the line of Jesus that are listed in Matthew. We've just named two of them.
Yeah,
both in intermarriages with people of other ethnic groups. Now, obviously, in Ruth's case, she commits to Yahweh, and so you look and go, well, that's good. But I'm wondering where they get this notion that it's wrong to intermarry. They don't quite say it's sin, do they? It just shouldn't be happening. Is that what they're saying? That I
think at the heart of this is where you have to make some kind of kingdom's distinction here. But at the heart of this, that you have pastors. This idea is predominantly, at least in our world, in the Reform world, what we're seeing, being pushed by pastors. And, you have a political world where these things are wrestled and talked about. And then you have what you're talking about, the Church of Jesus Christ that is built of every tribe, tongue, people, and nation.
Yeah.
And then we're not just saying that, we're saying this was always the purpose and design of the promise to Abraham.
Yep.
That in him, all the Gentiles, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. So at the heart of this, they just have a terrible biblical theology throughout the Old Covenant. And of what these sort of inbreakings that we get shadows of what is to come on a wide scale level when the gospel goes out to all the nations, is what it is anticipating is to come. Nineveh, the Ninevites, you got all these accounts and stories, and then promises, Psalm 87, of who is going to be born in Zion. It's Philistia and Tyre and Cush.
Yeah. Or Isaiah 19:25, right? Like Egypt and put Canaan, they're going to be a third with my people.
Yeah.
Right. This is the line of Ham, the dreaded line of Ham.
Yeah.
So you look at that and they're going to be incorporated into God's people. It's a bad biblical theology. I think it's a bad anthropology. It's a bad doctrine of man.
That's right.
Because they start to say things that are accidental properties, like the color of my skin or the pigmentation, or the nation which I'm born in, somehow has some kind of essential concern. Like it's like well, that's a woman and you're a man, so you're only supposed to marry your kind. That's right. Biblically, that's your kind. How do you know? Because you can produce children together. That's how you know they're your kind. It's not hard for you to figure that part out, So they don't have the same pigmentation. Now, there might be challenges if you have dramatically different cultures and languages and you try to intermarry. I'm not going to argue there wouldn't be challenges inherent in that because you've grown up differently. There are challenges inherent in every marriage, and that might add some challenges. But I'm not sure why it's being encouraged somehow, discouraged as somehow sort of a vice to intermarry. They don't want to quite call it sin.
Yeah.
But they don't want to say it's good either.
Well, I mean, who is the fool who says that they have pure ethnic blood of some?
I have no idea what I am.
Have you ever done these genetic tests? Yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys might be surprised to know they're Jewish. They actually have Jewish blood and they didn't even know it. The gene pool and what's happened all these years later, nobody's of pure ethnic descent from one nation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure not. I'm sure not. Like, I don't even know what the cocktail is that's going on there. Probably nobody wants to know or have it repeated. But there it is. Like the Lord knows.
Yeah.
I'm a human being. You're a human being.
Yeah.
And somehow we are now buying, I think, the kind of critical race theory, woke, leftist notion that what's most important about you is what differentiates you from me, rather than what's most important about you is what we share.
Right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So that concerns me.
Yeah. I mean, at the heart of this, I always think it's about people and place for a lot of these guys. Stephen Wolfe likes that phrase. And so, to hold out the earthly good, which he will say is in service of the heavenly good. But I always like to remind people that heavenly good is something that begins in this life. We begin to see, and it's in the very proclamation of the gospel of what it's creating. So it's all the peoples of the earth being brought together, all the believers in the earth being brought together as one body, and the people in place is the church. And so, this directly affects our ecclesiology, because you can say, and talk about a radical two kingdoms position. Well, we want it in society this way, but okay, we recognize in the church it's not going to be that way. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is like, I realize the dynamics and challenges, like you're saying, with marriage, and if you have people who come together from radically different backgrounds or ethnicities, sure, there's going to be challenges. Nobody denies that, but there's challenges in the body of Christ that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you see it. I mean, you're dealing with letters, Romans.
Yeah.
Like if you think about Romans, there are a couple of chapters. Not that the whole book in some ways are dealing with this, but there are a couple of chapters specifically dealing with issues about how the Jews and Gentiles are to get along.
Yeah, chapter 14.
Yeah. You see the same thing in a number of these letters. You're dealing with those kinds of questions. What did Babel do? It separated us as part of the curse. Was the division of ethnic groups on the basis of language. That's what the original division was on, right? It's on the basis of language. Because of our sin, he separated us on the basis of language. And when you come forward to Babel, from Babel to Pentecost, what's now happening?
They don't like that. They don't like that tie.
It's a reversal, though.
It is.
Right? Yeah. A new creation is being born in Christ.
Right.
By the Spirit.
Right.
And that new creation is incorporating people from every tribe, tongue, and nation in one body.
That's right.
And the hostility, the wall of hostility is dropped. And when they want to keep that separation, in as much as they do, it's contrary to the gospel story.
I don't see how, and this is what I think it's important to address. As pastors, we have a specific mission. We have a specific calling. If you're falling into the political wars of the day on these kind of things, I don't see how you are not going to be just like those of Matthew 23 that Jesus says, that they bind up heavy burdens on people and they prevent people from entering the kingdom. They stand in the way of entering the kingdom. They've lost what the mission is as a Christian living in this situation. I take the balls that are thrown at me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure. So let me ask you a question, because I know this is the pushback. So does that mean that you're a Christian?
Yeah.
You're a gospel minister. When you walk into the pulpit, you open this book and you teach it. You teach both what it says and its necessary implications. Because of your beliefs in Christian liberty and mine as Protestants, you're not a pope, so you don't get to bind people's consciences to things that are not good and necessary consequences of what this book teaches, right? You don't get to say, well, you should raise your children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. Therefore, because you should do that, you must homeschool them or something. You can't do that.
Right.
Okay. But you can say whatever you do for schooling them, it needs to be to the goal of raising them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. You can say that.
Right.
Okay, so we understand that as a gospel minister, that's what you do. But you're also a citizen of the American of this nation.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to have opinions, not stated in your pulpit, but at your mic or on the street about what's happening in your nation as a citizen here? Sure. So you have no objection to that.
I have no objection to that. But I am, as a Christian, elevated to a higher standard in how I look at the problems of humanity, the needs of humanity, the ultimate needs. And this life's pretty short and where people are going. And so there are a lot of things that are temporary that we are discussing. And there are a lot of things that in the political sphere, we have governing officials that address these things. Me barking on the internet all day long is not really accomplishing anything except about. So my point is, there are magistrates set apart to do justice in the country and to stop and prevent those things of different cultures that would do harm to our American values. I'm going to speak, of course, in favor of that.
Well, so let me press on that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but let me press on that. So you made a couple comments there. Yeah, as a private citizen, I can do that. You're going to vote. Mm-hmm. You believe things. You're going to sit around and have coffee. You and I have. I mean, we drove by some ICE protesters right on the way to a restaurant.
You want to tell everyone what you did? Probably not.
No. We drove past some ICE protesters, and I didn't do anything ungodly, just to be clear.
No eggs came out of the window.
No language, nothing. But you and I talked about it, that we thought there's all these old white liberals on the corner protesting ICE. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right? Okay. But there's this, we also talked about the fact that there's this inflamed situation in our country that's unfortunate, that we're concerned about as gospel ministers. But we had the conversation about what's happening in our country. We had it at lunch. We had that conversation freely. We're both very conservative guys politically. We know all that. So here we are having that conversation. You're free to do that. Let me ante it up a little bit.
Sure.
You're questioning the wisdom of doing that on a mic all day, and so I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. Do you think, guys, a gospel minister like yourself is free to do that on the mic during the week, or do you think, or you think he's not free, or you just think it's wise or unwise?
Well, I think I have to consider my very calling and vocation.
Okay.
As a pastor, and I want to make sure. I think this is what Lloyd Jones really is helpful with, that as a minister of the gospel. Okay, I'm talking about my vocation. As a minister of the gospel, I want to speak to those things that are of the utmost concerns I have in light of the scriptures for humanity. I want to stay focused on that. I want to stay focused on the forgiveness of sins, flee from the wrath and judgment to come. Does that make me as an individual citizen uncaring about the injustices of this life? Of course not. I'm glad to speak out on those things. I have. I've written a whole catechism on human sexuality, which was aimed at the culture.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I didn't sit back and do nothing. I wrote a book on it,
Sure.
to help people with that, because this aimed at the goodness, as I said in that thing, of God's creation design, which is good for humanity.
Yep.
So I'm certainly going to speak to those moral issues and those issues that are detrimental to the good of neighbor.
So you're doing that on your mic?
Yeah, I would do that. But
you're
what
not
I'm
giving your latest hot take on Trump. Is
what I'm concerned about is that now we've fallen into the extreme of what I just quoted with Lewis, so that what we're actually advancing is no longer really Christianity.
But in your pulpit, what I know is in your pulpit, because you preach law and gospel, and I've watched you guys. I mean, I've been at your church on a Sunday morning as you're reciting the 10 Commandments or whatever, right? Some portion of the law. You're going to stand up and say, under the 6th commandment, abortion is murder.
Absolutely.
It's a sin. We shouldn't participate in it.
Yeah.
Marriage is between a man and a woman. We shouldn't have no-fault divorce. You shouldn't be frivolously divorcing people. These are all sins in our culture. You're going to point those things out. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be the whole tenor of your ministry to just talk about law and all of our violations of it, or that you wouldn't be a gospel minister, right?
That's right.
But it is something you're going to point out. So you're saying there's all sorts of ways in which you're actually addressing these kinds of things that are distinct from having a podcast daily where you give your latest hot take on whatever Trump is doing with tariffs in Greenland or whatever.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are ministers doing? They've forgotten their calling. I mean, and this is where what I'm saying is there are clear moral issues, but you come back to the Kinism thing. You come back to the racism thing. This is not advancing the Christian cause.
Oh, I think the Kinism thing is a serious error.
Yeah. So what I'm saying,
like at the level of like heterodoxy.
Yeah. And now we have, all of a sudden a rise with figures who, and this is the deception, like a Nick Fuentes, who, calls himself a Christian Catholic, right? And what is Christian about that man?
Oh, yeah.
Every other word, and it's almost like we have a whole culture now who laughs this off, but let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth. I said this to Doug. It's like that is so far down now, that doesn't even matter. So F-bombs fly. There's no sanctity of human speech, number one, in this. That's just out. And if you say something like that, there's the effeminate charge,
Yeah.
But now there's like real hatred of the Jews, and now there's propping of Hitler as a good person. Yeah. So this is not Christian. There's nothing distinctively Christian about this, is what I'm saying. It's an anti-Christ movement that has come on us.
Yeah. Well, I had a young man in my house recently who thought I would resonate with him, I think, because I'm Reformed, and so I'm a covenant theologian. I'm not a dispensationalist. So I'm not going to be, in his mind, a Zionist. And however that term's being used by whoever it's being used, I don't even know. It's thrown around so much now, I don't know what it means anymore. This happens to all these terms, right? Mm-hmm. But he's sitting in my house and he's telling me about Israel and the Jews, and I'm pressing back, and he's like, well, the Jews are more wicked than every other ethnic group. I'm like, where do you get that from? Yeah. Well, Jesus says that they're children of their father, the devil. I'm like, well, Jesus says anyone who doesn't do what Abraham did doesn't have God as his father. And Abraham believed in me. So yes, were the audience Jewish religious leaders in John 8? They were. True, that's true. Judeans, technically, but they were, that's right. But does that apply to anybody who doesn't believe in the Christ? Of course it does. That's not uniquely a Jewish sin. So that...
What kind of Christian anthropology believes that a correct, in light of the scriptures, view that by nature, one ethnic group is radically more sinful than another?
Well, they've not read Romans 3.
Yeah,
we charge that all are
what
under
in
sin.
the world is that? I mean, and all men are liars. So, they'll pull out the verse, well, those Cretans. Those Cretans.
They're really bad.
They're really bad,
Yeah.
And then he's like, they're liars. They're liars. Paul also said all men are liars. So my point is, when it comes to a robust doctrine of sin, the playing ground is completely leveled.
Well, and it's a weird understanding of the nature of humanity. There's all of these problems.
Okay, but
can
there be a group that does more heinous things? Yes, of course. That we have no problem saying that. But that's what's being said here is dangerous, and there's something very demonic to it.
Oh, there is something demonic to it. It's, I think the lady's name is Hannah Arendt. If I remember right, she writes on totalitarianism, and she talks about since 1870. Whenever you see the rise of totalitarianism, both in the communist left, if you will, and the fascist right, and I'm talking about now going back to the early part of the 20th century, what they both shared was anti-Semitism. And I'm not entirely sure why that's a historical manifestation, but she's writing about this in the 1950s. So she's not dealing with the current debates.
That's interesting.
You know, and I don't entirely know what all that's about. But what I do know is that Christians, whether you're a covenant theologian who believes that Jesus is true Israel, that he is a representative head, and that all who are united to him, whether Jew or Gentile, are united to true Israel, and therefore sons of Abraham and children of the promise, right? Whether you believe that or you take a dispensational view on this thing, the bottom line is you're not permitted to hate Jews. You're not
bottom line.
Bottom line.
And this is Paul in Romans 9. I mean, there's nothing of Paul's spirit in these people.
No.
Where I mourn for my countrymen. And then he tells Gentiles, stop being arrogant against them.
Yeah, by the way, if you hate Jews, you're going to have a real problem with eternity, aren't you? You're going to worship a Jew forever. Right? Like, I mean, Jewish blood atoned for your sin. Jewish blood atoned for your sin. Try that one out.
In the humanity of Christ, that's exactly right.
And this is true. And there's a Jew who's ever interceding for you right now. Like, I mean, think about it. It's kind of nuts.
So maybe there's a reason they're hated so much.
Maybe there is. And,
throughout history, that there's been such persecution. I've always wrestled with, why is that? The Nazi thing, the Hitler thing, it was an awful thing that happened, that many were killed. But there's something to the fact that in the human nature, he chose to be that, and that the devil's wrath is being spewed out still.
Well, and by the way, you're not saying that Israel is virtuous because God chose them. That's not the point of the Old Testament story, is it?
Right.
The point of the Old Testament story is, though there was nothing special about you whatsoever, I set my love upon you and decided to bring the Messiah through your line.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And,
and he's grafting us together as one.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One. I mean, this is Ephesians 2, right? The two he's made one. That's Jew and Greek.
So what I know is this, as a covenant theologian who disagrees with dispensationalism, I don't even have a position on whether or not that land belongs to Israel from a theological standpoint. Some guys do, even in covenant theology circles. I can name them.
Yep.
They do have the other. Here's what I know. Paul tells me in Romans 11, don't be arrogant toward the Jews.
Stop.
Yep. That you're a wild branch that's been grafted into their tree.
Yeah, to blame them exclusively for the porn problem. I mean, this is just the stuff that goes on all day long.
Or the finance problem. But nobody ever blames the Dutch for all the finance problems. The Dutch are just as big in the finance world as the Jews are. They are. You know that's true. They're huge in the finance world. Nobody ever blames them.
Yeah. But coming back to sort of the distinction you pushed me on a bit ago. I've appealed to providence my whole time in trying to engage this thing, and people don't like that. They just don't. My view as a Christian is, as a pastor, wow, God says, take the gospel to all the nations. They're right here. Okay. What's happened in this view is, no, we got to kick them back out of our country. Okay. Let the political officials deal with the challenges of immigration. I get it. I'm not an expert on immigration. Let them deal with that. But my concern is, next door to me, I've got Japanese people. I've got Indian people from India. I've got Latino, Hispanic. That's my whole neighborhood. With their ideals, I'm not going to care about those people, and I'm going to look at them differently. And my concern for them is that they be brought into the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, I mean, that ought to be your concern as a Christian first and foremost, right? And we know this, by the way, when we go overseas. If you've ever gone overseas, which I have a number of times, and I'm worshiping in a church, it's a different language and a different culture, and these people look different than me and the people I'm used to, and they love Jesus, and I feel more at home with them than I do with unbelievers in my own language and culture.
Yeah.
Because I feel foreign because of the language and culture.
Yeah.
But they feel like family. People have probably had this experience if they've ever traveled much. It's like you've walked into the language of Misuse, like you've walked into an embassy of the kingdom of Christ in a foreign land. And I want to say, when I gather with Christ's people in His church, I'm gathered with the embassy of Christ, the kingdom of Christ in a foreign land.
That's right.
And even as an American, when I walk outside those doors, in some sense, I'm a foreigner. Always a foreigner, because my ultimate citizenship is in the kingdom of God.
Let me push you on that.
Okay.
So we say that, but that almost, and this seems to be the whole point of 1 Peter. Here, Hebrews, you have no continuing city.
Yep.
I get the argument. Listen, I want a land and a country. I do. I want a land. I want a homeland. I get all that. I value my homeland. I love my country. I do. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, my ultimate loyalties are not to this. What I fear is that we have become so absorbed in all of these discussions, there's little looking, as Abraham looked for the city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. We get mocked for that, for talking about that.
Well, it's a good longing in the human heart for a land and a people, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what's lost. Now I want to be in a land where God is present.
Right.
Because, it's a little bit like Moses in Exodus 33 when God's like, you can go to the land, but I'm not going with you. And he's like,
I don't want to go.
Yeah, we'd rather be in the wilderness with you than in the land without you, right?
Right.
And
we're not in a theocratic arrangement.
No, no. I'm hoping for a theocratic arrangement to come soon. I am majorly in favor of theocracy, namely Jesus returning.
Yes. Amen. I'm looking for that one. I'm looking for that
That's
one.
a theocracy I'm a huge fan of. I want it.
But that's the point. It's like, okay, people get ripped out of lands all throughout history. It's part of the sufferings of this age. Maybe one of the very messages and the reason why we're seeing the loss of, this is what all these guys say, all they worry about all day long is we're going to lose our country. We're going to lose our country. We're going to lose our country. Like, this is it. This seems to be the predominant driving fear of all of them. Listen, welcome to the sufferings of this age. Everything passes. Now, does that make me, I know what you're saying. Does that make me indifferent? No, it doesn't make me indifferent.
Yeah, we don't want to be flippant about it.
No, but what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is this, is that I do have a homeland. I do have a country. And that one, it's a kingdom that cannot be shaken. America can be shaken and will be shaken. It's Babylon. That's the other thing you want to say to these people. America is a kingdom of Babylon.
And I want to say there's a sense in which we visit that country, that land, that people every Lord's Day when we gather for
Amen.
worship. And
Amen. That's what I'm saying. People in place.
That's exactly right. And
it's a foretaste.
But Dr. Godfrey gave this series of lectures at your church not that many years ago about the fall of the West. And put it really in Obergefell and that whole gay marriage decision at that kind of point at which you see it's sort of over for, what people might have called Christian America right at that point. And will it bounce back? I don't think he was making predictions about whether or not it would make a comeback at some point. How could he possibly know? Yeah. What do historians do? They tell you about the past, not the future. They're not prophets, they're historians, right? And so he's talking about what's happened and what we've all seen. And I think he's right, and that, I think, has unsettled everybody. And it should. It's okay. Like, I want to tell, when I have members who are unsettled by the fact that it was nice that Christianity was in the center of the culture. Mm-hmm. That was, like, great to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And as someone who grew up, not even as a Christian, I grew up as a California pagan. And so, which means we weren't very committed to anything, right? But California, I grew up that way, but the culture around me had this kind of veneer of Christianity that was pleasant.
Yeah.
It kept a lot of things in check that are now running wild and out of control.
Right.
And I get why everyone's unsettled by that.
I do too.
And who wouldn't prefer to have some of that back? Right? And I think if our young people want to rise up and go out and teach and speak and run for office.
That's what you want to encourage. I was talking about my position as a pastor, but our people to be more involved in these things.
Yeah, sure.
Amen. But I just fear that, the pastors are communicating. They become so absorbed in all this worry.
Oh, that's right.
That they're missing their primary calling here.
That's right. Well, our joy is in Christ, right? Not in America, not in Trump winning re-election or Vance winning the next election or whatever. Was I more happy with certain election outcomes than others over the years?
Absolutely.
Of course. Will I be in the future? Yes.
Are you much in control of that, though?
No. I mean,
Go cast your vote in California.
If you ask it in California, it just doesn't matter what I'm voting for.
That's the other thing. Like, what do you want us to do? Like, okay, I only have so many options here.
I do vote, and I did hold office.
Marking on Facebook all day as the pastor and telling people to be all worried is not doing anything helpful.
No, I used to do some of that, and I realized it was like, what am I've stopped for a while now. It's like, what am I doing? I'll make a statement here and there.
Go visit your widow.
Yeah.
Go visit your widow. And I'm working on this myself. Like I've tried to get off more social media and just not sit there all the time. And it's been so good for my soul.
Oh,
I mean, you go back to it and you realize how ugly this thing is. And what we're caught up in. I look at brothers sitting around fighting all day long. I'm like, what a waste of life. I mean, give me a break. But
I was in a hospital room Sunday afternoon with a family as a member of our church died, and I was there with them while she was dying. And I don't want to look at social media, find out what's going on. What's the latest thing that inflammatory thing that Donald Trump said? What's the latest thing? Who is protesting at what church and in what streets about ICE, whatever. I'm just sitting with the family as this woman's dying, and her granddaughter's singing Amazing Grace as she takes her last breath in the hospital room.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking,
ministry.
These are the things that matter most. They didn't ask me right after she died, so Pastor, what do you think about what's happening with the protests about ICE and ICE right now? That's not what we were talking about.
Right.
Hey, Pastor, what? Explain to me again death. And they didn't say it in these terms. Death in the intermediate state. And the return. That's what they want to know about is like, so her soul separates from her body, she's with the Lord, but then her body's going to rise at the end. And we were just talking through all that again and our hope in Christ. And they were greatly assured. I'm thinking, this kind of stuff is happening in people's lives all around us. And the most important things in our lives are happening next door to our house, across the street, at our kids' school, in our family members' lives, with our coworkers. And we're paying no attention to any of that. Instead, we're on our little rage machines, stressing out about what the mayor of New York City said yesterday. And I'm thinking to myself, I feel sorry for the people who live in New York City with that particular mayor.
Life goes on.
But like, I live in California.
Yeah.
I got enough to deal with here. Yeah. So we're just not paying attention to things that matter most. We're distracted by the things that have the least impact on us. That if not for the information age, we wouldn't even know are happening.
Yeah. I just want to say, though, this stuff is ravaging the church. It's causing untold damage in local bodies. And our churches have to rise up and start disciplining these people. They're bullies. They're bullying people. They're shutting people out of the kingdom. They're attacking the very gospel that's meant to unite people and not divide. They're undermining what we're about. And our call is to, what did I just say? Did I say something wrong?
No, I just thought I would like you to give me a list of online personalities you'd like to see disciplined by their churches.
I'm glad to do it. I'm glad to do it. The problem is a lot of these guys are in churches that don't, outside of NAPARC, that have all their leadership is just yes men. So, but anyways, the discipline needs to happen on this front. If the gospel's being attacked and the very ministry, we should have no play for this. There's a point where it's time to rise up and say, enough of this. This has gone wild. You are not behaving as Christians. And it's time that men be real men in the church and discipline again. That's what I want to say. So, is that clear?
That's very clear. Yeah, I don't know if you could have made it much clearer than that.
Trying to be as clear as I can. It's tough business. To remember, we give an account for every idle word spoken. You think of that verse? Sitting around on the internet and trashing and fighting all day long, there's no fear of God in it. So,
yep. Gossip and slander and the violation of the 9th commandment.
Yeah.
Accusing people of things that they wouldn't recognize or know that ever happened.
Exactly.
It's a real problem. And this whole machine, we used to use these to actually call people and talk to them. It's amazing. Now we just use them to get all ticked off about everything.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to say. I would suggest that a lot of the pastoral depression, there can be various reasons for depression, but a lot of pastoral depression, there's somebody who's going to listen to this and knows this, that happens in the pastor's life is because of this. And because he's spending so much time on this, and it's not good for him. I think that's important to say.
Yeah, well,
there may be a variety of reasons. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I'm saying that is a huge contributor to anxiety and depression.
Yeah, and I think this is an important conversation, Chris, because for ministers of the gospel especially. So, I mean, the members that are at home and listening and watching this show and thinking, well, I'm not a gospel minister. You need to be good citizens in your country.
Absolutely.
You need to be good members of your church. You need to be reminded, though, by your pastors that your eyes are to be on Christ and his kingdom and not on this world.
Right.
Yes, would we like the laws to be better because we love our neighbors and want the best for our neighbors and our children and our grandchildren?
We should strive for that.
Of course. Yeah. But if our hope is set there, we're going to be tossed to and fro by every wind of news that comes through our social media feed or on Fox News or wherever it is. And we need to be really, really careful about what's happening to our hearts when we're doing that.
Yeah.
And I think the gospel ministers need to be particularly careful to understand that our primary job is to hold up Christ.
Yeah.
We want to be known as those who preach Christ and him crucified. Like that should be the tenor of our ministry. We hold Christ before our people.
Right. Right. Do you remember that verse in Matthew that says, if they say he's in the inner rooms, don't believe it? I think that was X. Just kidding. Okay. Anyway, no, those are good. Those are good words. Thanks for the thoughts, Chad. There's much more we could say. We just kind of tapped into it, but these are things that matter. And, we want to see our people. This is my greatest burden, is our people growing in the truth, and a people who are not caught up. What is that great verse in 1 Timothy? A true soldier is not caught up in the affairs of this life, but he gives himself as a soldier of Jesus Christ. So there's a getting caught up too much in the affairs of this life. That is exactly what this is. And I think we have to be on guard of that and help our people to the verse that would be called effeminate, but to lead a quiet and gentle and peaceable life in all godliness.
Oh, we're supposed to pray for that. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1 and following.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the thoughts. Helpful.